today's Wednesday Walkabout is going to be a little bit different. It's going to be dedicated to the area, what I think of as the gravel deck that's right next to my house, and I want to point out a couple of really fun things. So kind of starting with this area, this is the bistro area that I have reimagined a little bit, and I'm going to come back to this and talk about some of the details of this area in a minute. But first I want to show you something I'm so excited about. I think this is so cute. So I love little bistro sets, and I think that this bistro set here, it is from COSTWAY, and they actually asked me to do a sponsored post for them or a video about their products. And I thought, oh, okay, I definitely will, because they're having a fabulous sale right now. And this charming aluminum bistro set is one of the things that's on sale. It started out being, I think, over $280, Stuart, and now it is, I think, under $200. It's a great price, and I mean, this is really good quality. It's not wrought iron, so it's prohibitively difficult to pick up, but it's heavy enough that it won't blow over in the wind. And what's so fun about this, you guys, is even though it looks very charming here in this shady location, and that leads me to my question of the day: do you think this looks as charming as I do in this really shady area just to the right of my back porch when you step down? I think it's really cute. And if I didn't have too many other seating areas, I definitely would consider it for this space. But you know who does have a perfect spot for this? And that's our creative coordinator, Keri. And so we got one for her to use in an area that she is overhauling in her back. She's got a back walled garden that's absolutely charming. And I think this will be wonderful for it, because it will fit the space beautifully, and it's just comfortable. This has kind of a fun leaf motif. Now, obviously, I think, Stuart, if you don't mind kind of showing over here the furnishings that I have now, my outdoor furnishings that I have had for years, they very much match my signature look and my garden spaces, my garden space and spaces, and I think that is absolutely crucial. So if you go to COSTWAY and you are really looking at the myriad of different things that they've got on sale right now, and I think it's just foolish to not take advantage of sales right now that they have for outdoor furniture. I think you take that into account. Look at all of the different types of things, because they have selections that are like for modern gardens, or for Keri's is kind of a little bit more Mediterranean or Spanish, but all different kinds. But I think that will be a very fun thing, and I'm so excited to gift this to her. Don't you think she'll love it?
It'll be cool.
I think it'll be really fun. And I also love the way it looks styled with just some like little topiaries, or these are some free plants that I dug up from my front yard a while ago on one of my shop my own garden forays, and this was a hosta that just wasn't doing anything, and this is one of those little cherry laurels. I actually have several of these. But Stuart, if we can kind of segue, first give everybody a really good idea of what this vignette looks like, because to me does it have kind of a Hobbit fairyland vibe to it?
I'd say so.
With the different tree trunk sections that I've got, and the terracotta, and even all of my columbine that has gone to seed. I just think it looks very charming, and it looks especially, I think, appropriate sitting on the gravel. So if you have a small gravel space, you could tuck some kind of bistro seating, even on a balcony or something, Stuart. You could easily do that on an apartment balcony, or even on a small front porch, you could do that. So I wanted to show you that, and then I'm gonna go over here and show you also some things that would look cute on this table. But let's talk a little bit more about the gravel, because I get so many questions about it. and I have discussed this before, but apparently I can't talk about it enough. And that is, I used to have a wooden deck here. And I wish I had some older pictures of it. I used to have a redwood deck here that we had for many, many years. We had it installed when we first moved in. But as I learned more about the English garden aesthetic, I thought, okay, it just doesn't look appropriate. It looks a little too suburbia for my 1932 English Tudor house. So when it finally bit the dust after I don't know how many years, we decided to replace it with just gravel and flagstone, which, by the way, was a far less expensive option than the redwood deck that we had. And we then also, I wanted to make it merge, so we built some what I think of as a landing and launch pad porch right here, so that there is a large enough space here for when you go in and when you go out, and you're rather protected if it's raining or anything like that. And there's enough space here to conduct your business on this landing launch pad. And then obviously I wanted to make sure, and I believe at that time I measured it accordingly, for my terraced plant stand, where in the past I have typically had my myrtle topiary collection, but now I'm switching that out a little bit because increasingly this area is getting more shady. So that's another question I have. I'm going to have can I have two questions, Stuart? Two questions of the day. So many of you have started sending me images of your plant stand styling and how you're doing it, and I love to get them. I've been sharing them on Instagram. But this one is getting a little bit too shady. This kind of overheated dragon wing begonia notwithstanding. So I'm going to move it over here now so it's not in that full sun, because I just potted these up recently because I'm doing a little bit of an overhaul. So I've got some of my myrtle topiaries here, but I want a little bit more color, and I'm thinking about not only now but going into the fall. So I've got some dragon wing begonias that I just potted up, and you'll notice this one I planted just some cushion begonias along with it. These will fill out and really get happy. Stuart, now you're walking backwards, dear, so be careful. But the other thing that I'm doing at my potting bench, this was one of the shorts that I did today, is I am going to start potting up all sorts of coleus cuttings. Now this looks very, very sad because it's wilted, and I just potted these up and I haven't even watered them in enough. But they were very well rooted. And I'm going to start a bunch of pots, particularly of that burgundy coleus, so that I will have, a la Klaus Dalby, I'll have more color here, and then I think it will be brilliant in the fall when I tuck in some pumpkins and gourds and things. So continue to check back with me as this area evolves, and I've got this triptych here. I love planting things in threes. So it's not only one of my signature touches, but an easy design cue that you guys can follow too. And that is just plant 3 pots in a row of the same 3 things and in a similar patina pot. So all of these are in terracotta. These are heucherellas from the Southern Living Plant Collection. I just love them. They can handle a lot of shade. And shortly, this area, which this morning is in a little bit of sun, it's going to be practically in full shade, and these things will be a little bit happier. So I'm kind of rethinking this porch. Here is another little style cue. Stuart, if you want to follow me very gingerly, don't fall, down here. So obviously I've got my topiaries here that are staged up and down the back porch. And one thing that I did to really make sure that it was harmonious and fused and was in accordance with the rest of my garden when we built these steps was that I did brick risers. And then the treads our flagstone, which matches the flagstone that's out here in the gravel deck. But one thing was kind of bugging me, and in this 1932 house, it's very difficult to bring old houses into modern times, because at the time there was not cable, there was not all of these different kinds of utilitarian wires and things that are going everywhere. The only place we could kind of camouflage some of our cable piping or wiring was underneath the lip. So you can see there's about a 2-inch lip here on this tread, and you can see the cable line runs underneath the lip, but you could still kind of see it a little bit. So an English look that I like very much is to crawl English ivy along the tread. And so I'm doing that. Now, a lot of you will say, well, doesn't it go crazy? Yes, it does go crazy, and I do have to keep it contained, and I do that, but it's not that difficult, and it gives me the look I want, and I am not worried about it harming the brick. I've not found that to be a problem, and again, I love the aesthetics of it. So this is just English ivy that I've got growing underneath the tread, and it will hide some of that wiring. Isn't that ingenious?
That's very ingenious,
Stuart? And it will grow pretty soon. And again, it softens the look of this, and it gives it a very old English Ivy League quality, I think. Ivy League. Yes. So this whole area it's coming along, and it will get more sophisticated over time. I still like the quiet look of this corner here. And Stuart, do you think we could find some great big bows to put on these chairs?
I'm sure you could find good
and
bows.
Just set them. Yeah. By the way, Keri, my creative coordinator, she lives just down the street from me. And so I think that will be very, very fun. She can sit here while she looks at all of her bird books and examines all of her bird pictures and everything. So that's this area. Now here's another tip. So I'm hoping that this Wednesday walkabout will be tip filled for you.
Oh, the tip machine.
The tip machine in addition to the idea machine. So here was just a happy serendipitous thing. Sometimes you get great ideas when somebody else intentionally or kind of unintentionally styles something for you in a way you would not have thought of yourself. So I usually in the wintertime, I keep firewood up where my terraced plant stand is on my back porch. And there's a log rack, and it's filled so I can easily access the firewood for my kitchen wood burning fireplace. But I had a little bit of extra, and sometimes we use the firewood in this little charming outdoor fireplace, which was modeled after one that I saw in a state park. And also when I light my little fires in the fire pit over in the bistro. So the excess wood, when it didn't fit into the log rack, they stacked it here. And when I came out and saw it, I just loved the organic appeal of it. I love the fact that it kind of then created another separate space and garden room. I talk about this in my book a little bit. And then it just really, I think, popped when I planted or placed a faux bois container in front of it with some of my red geraniums. That gave it a very European feel, I think, a very rustic look that I just loved. So there's a tip. But here's another tip. I love growing succulents, and this is one of those trailing jades that I got at Bustani Farm. Stuart, we need to put a link to when I was shopping at Bustani Farm. And I loved it, and I love the way it looks in this metal urn that a friend of mine gave me. But it does need to be brought in the wintertime. Now, we think of succulents, rightly so, as being, excuse me, Stuart, as being full sun plants. They can handle a lot of sun, and in some cases, yes, they can. But they don't necessarily want to handle full sun when it's 102. Like everything, what I have found is they like high dappled shade, as does, coincidentally and counterintuitively, the hosta. It likes high dappled shade as well. Now, the brilliance of that is that when I bring in the jade plant later in the winter, right before first frost, it's been growing in dappled shade and in lower light than it would be in full sun. So when I bring it in, it's not going to suffer as much culture shock coming in from full strong sun into a shadier, darker location. It's already in a shadier, darker location. Now, you have to kind of test this to see how much shade is too much shade, but this one is doing fine in this amount of light. I haven't had to move it, so I know it can grow here. I love the way it looks on this little chimney, which is much more of a plant stand this time of year because it's too hot to use it as a fire. And it looks great in front of this little Miss Figgy, which is another, and by the way, look, Stuart, here. I've got figs on my little Miss Figgy. Now this had been growing in more sun to set fruit, but I love the way this looks, and all of the pots and all of the containers, even though they're not the same, they have the same old world kind of antiquated Mediterranean quality about them that I really like. So this very tiny vignette, I think, contains lots of good tips. Stuart,
Agreed.
Do you agree?
I concur.
Okay, now the other thing that I'm doing, because it was so hot last week, and today, Stuart, can we just bless the weather gods, thank the weather gods, because it is absolutely gorgeous out right now. The mornings have been spectacular. I've talked about it before, this hanging basket, and by the way, this was a sample of a product line I put together with QVC, and sadly we couldn't bring it to market. But I've got it planted with some of these angel wing begonias or dragon wing begonias, which aren't putting out a lot of bloom right now because they quit doing so when it got so hot. But now that it's cooler, you can see that it's starting to put out some new blooms. And I am encouraging that with one of the things that I am definitely doing this week, and that is really feeding all of my blooming plants, really all of my plants in general, because they are getting to breathe a great big sigh of relief in these nicer temperatures and less onerous conditions. So I'm definitely doing that this week, and hopefully I will be rewarded with all sorts of new blooms on all of my geraniums, which have also suffered in the heat, and all of my dragon wing begonias and hydrangeas and such. Now, it's interesting because even though you think of this as a shady area, and it is, during the hottest part of the day, high noon to about 3 o'clock, I actually, even though it kind of feels like I'm in a very secluded area. See, Stuart, it's a trash day. I told you whenever we shoot, it's a trash day. But I kind of feel like I'm at the bottom of this wonderful shady bowl. But during the heat of the day, this table gets really strong sun, which is perfect for my myrtle topiaries. So they will get more than adequate light on this table, but in the evening, especially as the sun goes farther down in the sky as the season ages, this table will be in shade and will be fine for outdoor dining. So, and I've got more than enough room on this gravel deck that I can accommodate actually multiple seating areas. So let's talk a little bit more about the construction of this gravel deck. So when I had the redwood deck, it came out to about right here, Stuart.
Let me back up so they can
Okay,
see what you-
it came out to about right here. And then there was a series of 3 steps that stepped down onto the yard. And that grade change is now accounted for on my back porch. But prior to that, the deck was at door level, and you came down and you stepped down into the yard at this point, and then I had just a little bit of flagstone out here. Well, I so loved the flagstone that was out here that I decided that I would just incorporate that into this gravel deck, which is a combination of flagstone and brick, because later, as you know, I added this brick border. So how did I do it? first of all, we just made sure that it was very, very level as we could possibly make it. And it was kind of, at that point in time, it was kind of hard pan clay. And this area is predominantly shady, so it wasn't an area that I suspected would have a whole lot of weeds or things like that, and it's also not an irrigated area. So when we put this down, we made sure it was very flat, but I did not put any kind of weed cloth or plastic substrata underneath it. All we did was put a layer of crushed gravel, maybe about 2 inches of crushed gravel that then kind of compacted. Then on top of that, we placed the flagstone, and then we came back over with a layer of this pea gravel. And the pea gravel we bought in bulk from, I believe it was Minnick Materials here in Oklahoma City. And happily, it is the same color of what I can get by the bag at Lowe's. And it's called Earth Naturals or something like that. It's just a very earthy pea gravel. So if it gets sloughed away or I have to fill it in, then I can just top dress this with some of that gravel. And coincidentally, it is also the same type of gravel that I use to top dress my pots. And that way it looks like it matches, it looks very homogeneous, and that keeps things from looking a little bit too cluttered. And you can see that I need to actually top dress some of my pots with a little bit more gravel. And then over here, this area is pretty much, it has so many times fallen prey to different really drastic weather events. But now it is pretty much filled in. It's a combination of the Terra Hydrangeas, Obsession nandinas, Acuba japonica, yews, and then the window box is very full. So this is pretty much finished over here, and it is a nice softscape counterpoint to the gravel and the earthy flagstone. And then over here in the bistro, or what I refer to as the bistro,
This is all anybody wants to see.
are the Terra Hydrangeas. And let me see if they're papery enough yet to cut. Not quite yet. But what I don't want is for them, this is in one of my shorts, Stuart, I don't want them to start turning too brown. You can hear the paperiness of that. So pretty soon I'll be cutting these for drying. This, by the way, is different from this one. This is a white wedding hydrangea, and it's a hydrangea paniculata that blooms on new wood. You guys know I love that from Southern Living. Okay, and then over here, I really kind of simplified this area, and look at how well and how effective just these amaryllis bulbs are, even without any blooms. They really ground this corner. The foliage is a nice counterpoint to a boxwood ball that I have up here, and I just think it really softens this corner. Plus, I did not waste these bulbs, and so many of you all, I love the way we think alike. So many of you all told me that you did this same thing, so I think it's just a fun way to reuse, recycle, repurpose bulbs you might have discarded before. Now, I think one of the most, I put this in the community tab, one of the most underappreciated plants categories is abelia. This is one of the Miss Lemon abelias from Southern Living. I love it, and I love the way it looks. But Keri and I were talking about this, Stuart. One of the reasons we love it so much is because when it blooms, it really attracts pollinators. It's a pollinator magnet. So when you put it and plant it in a container, you can then move the container to areas where you have things that you want to get pollinated. For example, where those pumpkins just came up. So I put a pot of it over there to really be a pollinator magnet, so you can kind of move it around. And then of course it just looks really beautiful, especially when the light is even over here. The light isn't even. Now what would have looked also precious, especially in the wintertime, on that little bistro set, would have been my charming little collection of these Blue Point junipers that I potted up in anticipation of winter. And I have started, you guys, when I dig them up, if they have some ground cover that's been growing around them, I just dig that up too because I love the way it looks cascading over the sides. And then I've got all of these mulched accordingly. And I think they're just so sweet, this one especially, with all of that mossy bark and things. But look over here, Stuart. So now let's end by walking back over to the Bistro set. Because unlike some of these, which will die down in the wintertime, this hosta, it will lose its foliage and it will die down. These darling little junipers will not. Now it looks like a fairy tale setting. And at Christmas time, wouldn't this be adorable? Can you not imagine putting a plaid blanket on here and drinking some hot chocolate out here? Stuart, here, you show this, and I'm going to get another one of these cute little junipers. Because even if you would never, even if you wouldn't sit there, I can so see using, you know, for those of us that never sit in our gardens, I still can so see this as a plant stand table because I think it's so cute. But I just think that would be dear with a little snow, and I just think it would be precious. Some pine cones, hot chocolate, a plaid throw, and wouldn't that just be adorable? Yeah, or a little tea party. A little bistro tea party set. Again, this came from COSTWAY. It's on sale now, but check out their other things. So, Stuart, have I forgotten anything?
I don't think so.
Okay, I hope you like that. We kind of switched this up a little bit, Stuart. I just thought it would be fun to do a walkabout in a designated area with some ideas you could replicate. And the other thing is, the nice thing about this gravel, you'll ask me, how many weeds come up through it, and is it difficult to control them? Very few weeds come up. If they do, I can slough them off with the heel of my boot or the toe of my boot, or I can pour boiling water on them, I can pick them, I can, use my vinegar spray. But in certain areas, I intentionally planted, I excavate out the gravel, and I can intentionally plant some things like mondo grass, or I'll allow certain things like the columbine to self-seed in here, and that looks charming as well. You can see some columbine over there by that little fireplace, Stuart. And then all of the edges of it, I think sometimes when you do something like this, you wonder, but how do I make it merge? How do I make it merge with the grass? How do I make it merge with the flower bed? And that's by making the transition as seamless as possible. So that's why in some areas it'll be bordered by brick, or it'll be bordered by flagstone, or if not that, then, do you see that?
What kind of butterfly?
It's a huge butterfly.
It was big. It was orange, wasn't it?
Uh-huh. I don't know if it was a monarch. Oh no, oh my gosh, Stuart, can you catch it? It's huge. Wow.
Oh, stood still for a second.
Be very quiet, so. Well, that was a fun surprise guest. Look, Stuart, it's right behind you. You might be able to catch it again. So sometimes our surprise guests at the end are of the humankind, and sometimes they they are winged insects. But wouldn't Keri have loved that? Can't you just see it? nesting on her little bistro table. Okay, so enough of that. Stuart and I have to get this gift ready to take over to Keri. I think it'll be very, very fun. I hope she's surprised. And I hope you guys enjoyed this little bit of a different Wednesday walkabout. So happy hump day, you guys. Well, if you've held on this long, here is your fashion epilogue and outfit of the day. And this one is especially fun to me because it's pretty much all thrifted items. And if you haven't watched the thrifting video where I purchased these breeches, then you're going to want to do that because it was quite a haul. So from top to bottom, Stuart, let me know if I forget anything. I've got some great big thick hoops on in this kind of, is it kind of a 60s, 70s vibe, kind of 50s, 60s, 70s vibe that I've got going on today, which is everything that's has been around is coming back around. So my earrings I think I got at Burlington Coat Factory a long time ago, not 100% sure. My shirt I got thrifted a while back. It's universal thread, but I love it because it's kind of short and it's not too bulky. I can pop up the collar kind of the way that I like to protect my neck. And I think it looks adorable with my most recent thrift purchase, which, by the way, this is the second day I've worn these, Stuart. I got so many compliments on these yesterday with people saying, where did you get those? And I told them I got them at Goodwill for $6. So these are so comfortable. I can't wait to style them for the winter as well as for the summer. I got these at Goodwill. I've styled them with just a little skinny belt. I kind of wish they had belt loops, but they don't. But nevertheless, I wanted to wear a skinny belt with them because it's got that look, almost kind of a 50s vibe that I like. My sandals came from Target. My watch, which matches it. Sorry, Stuart. You can tell I'm excited about this one today. My watch came from TJ Maxx. My bracelet came from one of my favorite shops that's no longer open in Salida, Colorado. And I just love the ensemble, you guys. So here's a fashion question of the day, I guess. What is your favorite thrift store clothing item you've ever bought? And right now, these are definitely in the top 5. My only complaint is they don't have back pockets, but they do have front pockets. So that is my fashion epilogue question of the day. What's the best thrift store fashion find you've ever made?